She is, thank you. I need to do my side of that recording. Hold on a second. So Dana, please give us a little bit of background on yourself and jump right into the conversation.
Hi, everybody. I'm delighted to be here, and it's wonderful to see so many of you here. Before I get started, do you mind if I take a quick picture? Because if you could unpin me for a second, John, and if everybody could put their videos back on. I'm notorious for doing these really great, having great interaction, and we have a fun event, and then I realized later I didn't get a picture. So everybody, videos on, big smile. Thank you. Okay, ready? Super. Thank you very much. Thank you for humoring me. Okay. Now you can pin me again. I have to write
Social
it
media
in big
drives us
red
forward.
letters on my stuck on my computer photo because otherwise I forget. Okay, so I'm an angel investor and I've seen probably thousands of pitches. And here's something that I've noticed, this pattern that even the most brilliant founders struggle to communicate their ideas in a way that investors understand it and get excited. This happens all the time. So today, this is what we're going to fix. This is your time to take notes, for time for learning, and there will be time for Q&A at the end and also some time to practice. So take notes and write down your questions, and at the end, we'll have lots of time for interaction and questions and sharing. Um, and also, while you're all here, speaking of sharing, put in the chat where you're calling from. And if you want to connect with everybody else, you are more than welcome to put your LinkedIn link there. This is our time for connection and meeting new people. So we'll take advantage of that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so I'm going to quickly introduce myself. I am Dana Sather Robinson. You can call me your friendly neighborhood angel investor. I'm also a pitch trainer and pitch coach and public speaking trainer. So therefore, when I see pitches, I look at a pitch with two lenses, that of an angel investor and also that of a professional trainer of presentation skills. So with that investor lens, I'm a clean tech investor with E8 Angels. I also tend to pitch events with a lot of other groups, including many that John has hosted. And I see a lot of different founders and pitches because I have clients in all types of industry. Probably most are tech at this stage. So I've observed what's working and what isn't, and I've learned what investors want. And then that as a trainer of presentation skills, where I've worked globally, I've done training in Asia, in Europe, and in the US. So when I'm looking at through the trainer lens, I'm noticing how people are communicating when something works really well and exactly what they're doing when it's not working. And then as the trainer, I have these tools that I can use to help people improve how they communicate. So that's why I became a pitch coach and trainer, is that I would see these founders that just with a few simple tools, their pitch could be so much better, and I couldn't resist offering to help. So that's why I do this. Here's some things that we're going to cover today. We're going to cover, first of all, the investor perspective so that you understand where investors are coming from. And I'm going to cover some common mistakes that I see happen all the time. And I'm going to talk about how you can keep investors engaged by focusing on what they really care about and what that is and how you can get started in a great pitch. And I'm really happy to see a diverse group here from different countries, and we've got some investor friends here. Thank you for showing up. I appreciate you very much. So we can always ask their perspective at the end on, well, investors in your industry, what would you want? I'm going to stop sharing now so that we can see each other. I find it much more engaging to not be looking at slides. Okay, so I'm going to talk about today some things that investors, what they're thinking and what they're really looking for in a pitch. These are the not obvious things. This is not the typical slide deck stuff. I mean, you can find that online. So I'm going to talk about kind of a different perspective, like what are they thinking when they're looking at a pitch? Something I want you all to remember about investors is that really investors are people too, right? Investors get confused, they get overwhelmed with information. Most investors, particularly those on this call, are really nice people, and they'll help you if they can, even if they're not going to invest. The key is that you need to make it easy for them to understand and remember you and what you're doing. And one way to make it easy for investors is for you to, take in this really important concept that's just going to seem counterintuitive, but here's what you have to remember. Your pitch is not about you. Your pitch is about your investors. An investor pitch, right? It's for investors. The whole point of it is for investors to decide if you're a fit, if they're interested, if they can help you. So it's important to have this mindset that you're pitching for investors, not for yourself. And I call this mindset investor focused. Investor focused mindset, when it comes to investor pitches, means that the content of your pitch and how you deliver it to them is tailored to the needs of your investor. So the content is investor focused, and when you're in person, how you talk to them is in a way, you communicate in a way that keeps their attention and builds relationship. So I need to ask you all something. Think about this and write your answer in the chat. When you're pitching to an investor, what's your goal for that particular meeting? What do you think? Put some answers in the chat. And next meeting, very good. We've got the right answer right away. So in that meeting, and yes, getting to know them, building a connection, building relationships. So your goal in that pitch, as you're building relationships and getting to know them, is to be remembered, so that, because this is important to succeed. My goal for you when you give a pitch to an investor is that days later, they will remember what you do and why they like you. This is not easy because most presentations and most pitches are not that memorable. I'm sorry to say that, but that's the truth. And I'm going to give you an example. Think of a PowerPoint presentation that you've seen sometime in the last couple months, right? Where you're watching this presentation and let's say it's 20 or 30 minutes. You're watching the slides, you're reading, you're listening, or you're reading and you're listening. And you think, you follow along. And then a week later, a colleague of yours says, I missed that talk. How was their presentation? And you go, oh, it was great. They did a really good job. Oh, I'm sorry I missed it. What did they say? How much would you remember of a typical PowerPoint presentation a week later? Percentage-wise. Now, be honest and put that in the chat. How much do you think you would remember of the content of a typical PowerPoint? All right, so we have some 5%, some 3%, 0, 10, 5. Excellent, thank you. I ask this question a lot, and the most common answer I get is around 5 to 10%. Usually it's on the lower end of that. So that's the norm, that after a PowerPoint presentation, we remember almost nothing, which is kind of sad because that person probably spent hours working on those stupid slides, right? Think about how much time you spend on slides. They spent a lot of time on that, and we remember almost nothing. So now you imagine that this is an investor talk in their meeting with their colleagues or their investment partner, and somebody says, "So who have you seen recently that's interesting?" How much are they going to remember about you and your business and your pitch? And I can tell you from being in those investor meetings where we're talking to each other about who we've seen and who we like and what we remember, people don't remember very much. So I want you to think, will they remember you? Will they remember why they like you? And if you're going, so which means if you're going to be remembered so that you are part of that conversation that says, hey, this is who we need to invite in for another meeting. Your pitch content needs to be laser focused on what it is that investors are going to remember and listen to and relate to their colleagues. And your delivery needs to be engaging so that they remember you. Because I'm in these investor meetings where people, will say, yeah, I didn't get it. Remind me what they do. So this is the communication I hear from founders and investors. Founders tell me investors just don't get it. But investors complain to me, I just read this 20-page deck and I don't understand what they do. Or I just saw this 10-minute pitch. I don't get it. So this is where that disconnect is between what founders like to talk about and what investors want to hear. This is a communication gap that I've determined to fix. But here's what you need to know about investors. At a very high level, when an investor meets you, whether it's over coffee or it's in a meeting, is they just want to understand what you do, if you're a fit for them, and if your business has the potential to be wildly successful. So these are the things you need to make really clear. These are the mistakes that I see happen all the time in pitches. So I want you to learn about these are the mistakes to avoid. Ready? Write these down. The first one is when investors dive into too much, they're just talking too much about their product. Second is, I call it TMI, too much information. And the third is that the pitch is not engaging. Like the delivery is not keeping investors' attention. Okay, so here's why these are a problem. The first, talking too much about the product. I have seen that founders love talking about what they've built, how it works, these new features that are coming on. And I totally get why. This is human nature. We love to talk about what we're working on. We talk about what we're excited about. We talk about what we're building. I do that too. But here's the thing. Investors don't invest in products. They invest in businesses. And investors are not your customers. So investors are, as they're listening to product features, now they're kind of thinking, who would buy this product? Okay, so how big is the market? Is there traction here? Don't leave them guessing about the things that are important to them. So save that deep dive into product details for a later meeting and talk about your business, because that's what investors invest in. Second biggest mistake. Well, sometimes it's the first, depending on the type of founder. Second mistake I see all the time is TMI. Too much information crammed into a pitch. And it's very easy to think that we should put all of the details in our pitch deck, right? We just in case investors want to know this, I'm going to put it in there. And we think it will help investors make decisions. But in reality, having lots of information crammed into a deck or your pitch is kind of overwhelming, right? It's overloaded with information, which means that even if people are trying really hard to pay attention and get it, they're going to miss the key points. And if you're giving that pitch with a lot of information and talking really fast, people stop listening. So here's why you don't need all those details up front, is that nobody invests after one pitch, right? In that pitch that you're giving in that meeting, your goal is to get to the next meeting. Decisions are made after due diligence. So you actually want your pitch to leave them curious. The key here is less is more. The less information in your pitch, the more your key ideas will stand out, and it's easier to be remembered. So leave some details out on purpose. This allows for questions because you want those questions. This is the conversation part and the relationship building part. And then, of course, they have to have a second meeting if they want to dig in deeper. Okay, third big mistake that happens all the time is not being engaging while pitching. And here's what's happening, in my opinion, when that happens, is that people are so focused on the deck that they're not focused on building relationships. Delivering an engaging pitch is just as important as having a great pitch deck. So if you're putting all your effort and preparation time of your meetings into your deck, then you're missing that opportunity to connect to your listeners. And in this case, that's potential investors. So you need to be able to speak in a compelling way that connects to your listeners. So the mistake to avoid then is that founders are really hyper-focused on the deck when preparing, but also when delivering. I mean, I've seen founders pitch and you can tell they're looking at their deck instead of at investors. So it's kind of obvious when it's like it's harder online, right? You can be looking at your deck, but then you have to remember to look at the camera. But I've seen founders in person, it can also be bad, turn around and look at the wall. And they're looking at the wall, at their slides, instead of really connecting with eye contact to their listeners. So, but I can see why this happens, why this focus on deck happens, is because everyone tells you before you pitch, you need a deck. And on a lot of some of these founders or these investors here in the room, they have a website that will tell you what they expect to see in a pitch deck. If you do an online search for a pitch deck, for investor pitch, you will find deck templates. So it's all about the deck and what you hear, but what no one is telling you, oh, when we do meet, you have to sound engaging and you have to be really clear in how you explain your business. They don't warn you that if you're boring and you're talking to your slides, that we stop listening. But that's what happens because investors don't invest in decks. They invest in businesses that are led by teams that they have confidence in their capability and commitment. So if you ask every investor here in the room what their number one criteria is when making an investment, it's probably team. So investors actually do want to get to know you. I've been in these investor discussions and people talk about who we've seen pitch, and I often hear them say things like, wow, I'm really impressed with that team, or gosh, isn't she an amazing founder? I have never once heard somebody say, I just love that deck. It just doesn't happen, right? It's what we put our effort into, but that's just the support tool. You've probably heard the golden rule of business. All things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to people they know and like and trust. And from what I've seen in the startup world, even when things are not equal, we still do business with people we do and invest in people we know and like and trust. So relationships matter. Investors want to get to know you. They want to see that you are capable and committed and trustworthy. So investors do notice when someone makes a great impression. The good news here is that everyone can improve their pitching skills. Everyone can learn how to create and give an engaging pitch. Communication skills matter. So it's just as important as your deck. Okay, so some key things here to remember, right? Clarity over details. Your pitch should be so clear and concise that an investor can explain your business to another investor days later, which means no TMI. And your pitch needs to be engaging. So this takes a lot of practice until it's conversational and feels like you're connecting to people that you're talking to. And your pitch needs to be laser focused on what investors want. So, what is it that investors really want when they're looking at the details of a pitch? Okay, these are the top 7 that I think you have to be very clear to highlight when you have, time. If you have a 3-minute pitch or a 1-minute elevator pitch, you might not get through all of these, but these are the 7 that you need to make sure are really clear to investors before you get into product features. Okay, the first one, probably obvious, problem. That you are solving a real and urgent problem. And you can be very specific in explaining why this is a pain point for your customers. Second, solution. You have a unique solution, and you can make it clear how your solution solves your customer's problem. Market opportunity is next. This one founders really struggle with, but it's so much more than a big TAM. Okay, be able to explain current trends that show why now. That's really what market opportunity means, is why now? And being able to be specific in your beachhead market and who that is and how big it is. And next is business model. That you can really explain well how your business model makes you profitable, how you make money, and how it's going to help you scale. An investor friend of mine said to me recently, she says, I see so many product ideas with no business model. So you can't leave that. That is important to investors. Next, team. That one should be about why you. Why are you the best team to grow this business? Particularly if you have some unique founder market fit, because you have this unique expertise, then tell us that. Tell us why. And the next is traction. Traction really means customer validation. How can you explain to investors in 1 or 2 sentences how you have customer validation, that there's real demand for your business? And the other one that is often left out is vision. If investors would be motivated by your vision, share it. I worked with a founder last week, and it's just the pitch was still a little flat. So I asked him about his vision, and he just lit up and said, "I'm so glad you gave me permission to share my vision because this is the bit I'm really excited about." So if you can be clear on what your vision is, and if that's what gets you excited, that's what's going to get investors' attention. I'm going to now take us through how you can do that, like how you can create this pitch story that's investor focused. And the first step in creating a great pitch story is brainstorm and plan before you start on the deck. If you do your brainstorming and planning first, this will save you lots of time and it will make your pitch story much more clear with investors. It will resonate because you've figured out how you can explain it first. What not to do. Do not download a pitch template and fill it in. I don't know about you, but when I'm working on it, I bring up PowerPoint or Google Sheets and I start on filling it in. It's so easy to get distracted. This is not the place for flow of ideas. This is the place for design. So I start typing it in and it's like, oh, I have to change the font, put another text box, change the background color, make that font bigger. And then what was I going to say? It's gone. So brainstorm where you can do some flow of ideas and work with your team or somebody who knows your business well to talk out these ideas or storyboard them across a whiteboard or write on paper, but find a way for you to talk through those ideas and planning for each section of your pitch. And then make an outline of your whole pitch or a storyboard before you start on the deck, so that when you start on the deck, you know what you're going to put in. You're not trying to do the creative stuff while designing the look. Let's do some of that together. Okay, we're going to start with problem and solution statements because I find that this is the biggest problem area for founders. Problem statements can be really problematic. And here's why. So many problem statements are too general or vague to show that there's a specific pain point. Some common mistakes that I see are that people talk about the overarching issue that might motivate you, but it's not really clear on the problem you solve. For example, I see a lot of pitches that say the problem is climate change. Okay, so we can all agree that that is a problem, but that's not necessarily the problem that you are being paid to solve. Think of your customers here and what they're paying for. Another mistake I see is framing the problem as part of the solution. I've seen a lot of tech founders say, well, enterprises are looking for this, or our industry needs more of this. But that's more of a solution-focused statement than it is a problem. So let's brainstorm a little bit on your real problem that you solve. Think of your customer. Think of their perspective. What pain point are they experiencing before they would be looking for your solution? What do they actually say before they buy? So your problem statement should be focused on who pays to solve this problem and what's that pain point. And this might take a little explaining, but play with it, brainstorm on it, talk it out with somebody until you can get that problem statement down to 1 or 2 sentences. because investors don't want to hear the whole background of the industry on why this is a problem. They want to hear what's the pain point of your customer that makes it real and urgent, that they are looking for a solution like yours. So from that, then we can develop the solution statement. Key point here is that we want your solution to match the problem you've identified. And one way to do that is to focus on the outcome of your customer, not the tech of what your solution does. Okay, so I see this a lot, that our solution is this technology and they're explaining it, but that's not from the customer perspective. So think, as you're thinking about your customer and they have this solution, right? Or you give them this, you're bringing a solution to their problem. What is the outcome for them when they use your solution? How does your solution directly solve their problem? So for example, I'll give you an example of a problem. I heard a pitch quite a while ago during COVID where the problem statement was the problem is climate change. And then the story of how that impacts farmers. But it wasn't actually clear what problem he solved. So I gave him some feedback and saw a pitch practice a week later where it changed to this. Meet Maria, a blueberry farmer in Eastern Washington, who loses 25% of her crop between harvest and to customer delivery, which is a huge revenue loss. Our solution reduces crop wastage by 50%, reducing or increasing revenue. Okay, so that was a great story, totally focused on the customer. So the problem in this case wasn't climate change, it was crop loss and revenue loss. So therefore the solution is reduce crop wastage, increase revenue. You see, that makes them match. And you want both of the problem and solution really short and simple so that anyone can understand it, even if they're not in your industry. So for this problem and solution match, I actually recommend storyboarding them and making a list in front of you. So, well, for a lot of B2B customers, the problem might be losing revenue or something's really time consuming, or there's high costs or inefficiencies. Then your solution that matches that would be saving money or increasing revenue or more time efficient or improved productivity. You might think this is just too simple, but you actually need to make it super simple at first glance and at first explanation so that people understand that. And then you can get into why it's particularly hard for your customers or for your industry or why this hasn't been solved yet. But we need that simple, and if your problem and solution match really well, it's in people's subconscious that it's like, oh, that solution solves that problem. It validates what you're doing at that subconscious level. If you have, and I hear this a lot of times from founders, like, I solve a lot of problems, or the problem I solve is really, really complicated. In those cases, try a customer story. If you can explain your customer journey from pain point to successful outcome using your product, then that provides this clarity to investors of what you actually do for your customers. Right? So I hope you're taking notes because I'm going to ask you for your problem solution statements at the end. Okay, let's brainstorm on another one that's quite hard for a lot of founders, and that's market opportunity. Market opportunity does not just mean your TAM, SAM, SOM. or Tam, Som, Sam, whatever the order is, right? Because numbers don't always mean anything. We want to know what's behind the numbers. Explain to investors what you see going on in the industry and what trends are happening so that you can show that this is the right time to invest in this industry. For example, on Airbnb's deck, they explained this trend that they saw of Craigslist. On Craigslist, people in various cities were listing rooms for rent to travelers. This was an increasing trend that showed people were more willing to rent their rooms out to travelers, and travelers were more willing to stay at somebody's house rather than at a hotel. That trend made people go, oh, this has potential here. The market is changing. To show that you have the expertise and insight in your market, tell us what you see that nobody else has noticed. So those are 3 examples, but you get the idea. For every section of your pitch, ask yourself questions about why it's important, who does this involve, what is the trend, how can I explain this in a really short, concise, and clear manner to somebody who's not deep in my industry or product like I am. After you've done that brainstorming, then you plan your pitch story. Create that narrative in outline form that flows logically. So you may rearrange things a bit. This is your solution to having a product-focused pitch, from a product-focused pitch to an investor-focused pitch with a clear story that investors will understand. It will also, creating this narrative and a really clear outline will also help you to be concise, because you're not then over-explaining what you see on your deck. You can kind of think of it in outline form. The framework to a great pitch is that you have story, then deck, and then a great presentation. That story that's investor focused, that that is really clear and easy to understand, that the deck supports that story, and that when you present, your communication skills are engaging and you can build relationships with the right investors. I'm going to share my screen here to really emphasize this. So I want you to remember framework to a great pitch: story, deck, present. The pitch story, you've outlined it to be very investor focused. The deck supports the story, right? So it's not you talking to the deck is supporting you. And then you really practice that and present it in an engaging way so that you then will be more likely to be remembered. You're building relationships with the right investors, and they're getting to know you and what you do in a way that they can be your cheerleaders and repitch you to their network. I created a handout. This is brand new, just a couple weeks old. So I'm sharing it with you guys. This is called What Investors Really Want in a Pitch. So you can scan that QR code. I think I've got let me also put a link in the chat if you prefer to do that. But this way you put your email address in, and then you will receive an email with the link. That way you can download it on your computer. A little easier that way. I am also working on something else that's new. After I created this, I've had founders ask me, like, this is fun doing stuff in a group. When are you going to do a boot camp? So I'm actually working on that. If you are interested in joining a pitch group pitch boot camp. So we do this together with time to give each other feedback and learn to create a great pitch story in a supportive group. Join this, put your name on this email list so that when I get it all put together and scheduled, you will be the first to know. I just need your email address and name, and then you can know. But the boot camp will start with the hardest thing, and that's the pitch story. That's what we would work on. And don't forget to practice. Practice your pitch. I love this app for practice, Udly.ai. They're based in Seattle. And it's this great AI tool that will give you feedback not only on your pitch content, but also on your delivery. If you're being conversational, if you're talking too fast or too slow, it will tell you. Okay. The key here is to remember that you start with the story, then build the deck, and then make sure that you're engaging. And that way you are attracting the right investors. And now I would love to hear your questions and your problem solution statements if you want to throw some out and see if they land. And we still have some investors in the room. I'm so excited. Thank you guys for showing up. So you can get feedback from more than just me. So are there any questions?
Do you want to lower your screen so that people
Yep.
can be seen better? And if you want to talk, if you raise your hands, that'll make it easier for me to focus the conversation. And Sumit as still hunting for that little buttons, but I'll say, Sumit, go ahead.
I am sorry, I couldn't find the button. Yeah, so I physically rose my hand. Thanks for that introduction. I mean, as a fractional CFO, I'm deep in the numbers, but it's interesting. I'm telling my founders don't focus so much on the numbers at this stage. And so, I'd love to hear from you on that. I mean, it's not part of your seven key elements. You didn't mention, a P&L or cash flow statements, but what's the right level at this stage of figures and numbers to share, if any?
Can I jump in on that, Dana?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So one of the statements that'll happen in the back room is people will say that founder doesn't know their numbers. And that's a complete dismissal of that company. And so while what you're trying to do in attracting the numbers is this, like the seven things she was talking about, is the attraction part of it. When the questions come up and the other things come up and you don't demonstrate what I call financial discipline, which you as the founder understand the numbers of your business and where it's at. And in fact, you demonstrate lack of discipline by not knowing. You basically hit the eject button and you're out of the conversation. And so while you have the attractors, which Dana has been trying to talk about, there are different things you can do which will then hit an eject button, which stop the conversation. Even though the conversation didn't actually stop, the computation on the part of the investor has stopped and you have moved firmly into the no pile. And I've watched this more than once where a very attractive presenter has just demonstrated lack of financial discipline and we bang, the conversation's over in less than a second.
Yeah,
Dana, you want to comment more?
Yeah, you do have to know the numbers, but you also need to be able to explain them really well. And numbers are one of those things that tell a story. So if when you get to say the financial slide, we don't want to fill it with a spreadsheet. We want to just highlight those really key two or three numbers that are important, whether it's, revenue or number of customers and then revenue. Like there's so many ways that it can be showed that there's potential here without overwhelm. So you need to choose what's the story I'm trying to tell and let the numbers back it up. Jonathan, I'd love to hear what you would say.
Yeah, for me, it's really easy to get distracted by the numbers and big spreadsheets and all that. A lot of people will be focused on reading that. Well, what's their TA, what's their cost of acquisition, blah, 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 and they won't be listening to you. In the course of a first pitch, you will really want to give a few things. First, the market that we're going after is big enough to allow me to make my money back as an investor, ideally with a good amount of profit, that you're going to get a big enough part of that market, and that you can do that in a capital efficient way. That's often called the use of funds. That I know that through your experience and through planning, that the investment that as an investor I would make would be deployed to something that's going to lead you further down the path is really important to have. The other details, the profit and loss and cash flow, those will come later. However, this is something that I often advise. Be have a well curated set of backup slides that are not part of your normal flow, but you can use to illustrate and explain that you have the information and that you're waiting for that second conversation for that due diligence. So if you have a big spreadsheet that has information and someone asks about a very specific thing, then you say, oh, glad you asked. And here's something that's kind of cool that a lot of people don't know about PowerPoint is that when you're in presentation mode, you can just type in on your keypad the slide number, press enter, it'll take you right there. So if you know that your financial slide is slide 28, you just type in 28 entry, bang, glad you asked. Let me show you slide blah, blah, blah. You can take that. That's usually extra time. Oftentimes when you pitch, you're time limited. If you can use that extra time to give that, that's great. The last thing, and this is a little asterisk, this is only in certain industries. It is important to show a mastery of any kind of cost of goods or capital equipment that you need to produce it. If you're looking to build a franchise operation, you need to build out a restaurant, or you need to buy a piece of equipment, or there's significant things that you're manufacturing, you do need to talk about that because that kind of upfront cost is an important part of it. So just showing mastery is really important. Going into details can really get lost.
Yeah, yeah. It's good to save the details for Q&A or the follow-up meeting. As long as you have that story with a couple data points, make it clear. It helps.
Yeah, and if you
Thank
have a
you.
great market that people don't understand, just saying how big it is might, if someone's not familiar with the surgical tubing market, I saw some, we see companies like that, explaining that to a general audience, really understanding who your audience is and be able to explain the opportunity space that may not be obvious can be really helpful.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Sumit, for that question.
Hey, Dana, I got a quick question, and it's on length of time. How often should a pitch go? Like minutes, 5 minutes, half hour? Is there like a standard that investors are like kind of narrowing down on, or?
Okay, well, that's like saying how long is a piece of string, really. And so that this is why an outline is really helpful, because if you create an outline before you start creating slides, you can then adapt that to something like SAC has these events coming up, and it starts with a 1 minute. And then if you pass that, you could do a 3 minute. And then if you pass that, you can do, 5 or 10 or 7, like it varies at each round. And every investor you meet will be different. Some will ask for a 3-minute video before they meet you. Some will say, come and give us a 10-minute pitch. Some will say, come for a half-hour meeting.
Okay.
So you need to actually be prepared. I like to, when I'm working with clients, we start with an elevator pitch. Let's explain these 5 or 6 things in 1 minute or 90 seconds so that you're forced to be concise. It's a really good exercise to make yourself explain your problem and solution in 3 or 4 sentences, right? Then from that elevator pitch, then we'll create an outline for a 5-minute pitch and a 10-minute pitch. And then you're ready. You can adapt that for different types of audiences. Let's say you're invited to give a 7-minute pitch to a screening call at Kretsu or whatever. You just adapt it in your notes and time it so it lasts exactly the right amount of time. And that you could just use the slides that accordingly. So be ready for all of it. And sometimes you show up and you think you're going to go through your deck. But if somebody's looked at your deck already, then they might just say, let's just chat over coffee. I've looked at your deck. I now want to get to know you. So you need
So,
to have prepared that really clear story that you can explain with or without your deck.
gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Any other questions?
Go ahead, Ewan.
You're on mute, Ewan.
Hi, Donna. Thank you so much for the great presentation. I think there was a lot of great advice and also great guidance on really how to structure the pitches. My question is related to the problem. I think one of the examples that you gave earlier was about the blueberry farmer, basically the crop loss and how it saved maybe like 25% or increased revenue by 50%. I guess for some of the earlier ventures, I guess depending on the stage of where we are, it might be hard for us to have like tangible numbers. So do you have like advice or maybe a way of like maybe structuring the pitch so that it's still numeric, but also like I guess it still is like, in a sense that quantitative instead of like balancing that with like the qualitative aspect of the problem, if that makes sense.
Yes. If you don't have revenue yet and you're early, to really understand the problem you solve, you need to do customer discovery
Okay.
and finding that from your potential customers and really digging in on what are their pain points, what are they looking for, what do they really want solved,
Okay.
and because you can't. And being able to explain the problem from their point of view will show investors that that you know your customers.
I see. Okay.
Anything to add on that, John? I know you're big on customer
Yeah,
discovery.
I divide, the four step to epiphany from Steve Blank, I divide that into two pieces, right? So there's discovery, there's uh sorry, I keep forgetting the numbers or the names of the pieces, but there's customer problem fit, there's problem solution fit, there's customer solution fit, and then there's market product market fit. And in between steps 3 and 4 is the inflection point that drives you into scale. But before you've hit product market fit, you have a whole bunch of experiments to do. The very beginning is prove that people are willing to pay you, customers. I know this is a customer, and that they have this problem. And I have 100 of them that have the problem. And then of those 100, 40 of them think that this solution solves that problem. And then of that, this group will pay this much, this group will pay that much. And you have to essentially characterize what the market looks like, right? So there's different submarkets and those submarkets behave differently. And if you run your experiments in your customer development experiments, which is the broader set, then you should be able to have characterized numbers for this particular group of people are averaging about this kind of benefit, right? And I'm doing that at the beginning before I hit my scale button, right? I'm doing this as experiments, the measure with specific people. So like today at Open Coffee, we had a conversation with someone with a product that's just being released. They are doing pilots and they're doing paid pilots. And the paid pilots then help them characterize what's important for that particular kind of customer, right? So you run the paid pilot experiments at a much bigger level about customer discovery rather than at a smaller level for proving that the MVP actually works. Those are two different projects. And what you're doing before product market fit is the experiment to discover where I should focus my business in my sub-markets of the customers.
Yep. Thanks, John. And as Chris says, lots of customer interviews. Austin.
Um, yeah, actually, I think that's a good segue into my question. When you talked about market opportunity, I didn't get the specifics, but I think it was you mentioned like not just your beachhead market. And if you do have that bigger vision of moving beyond your beachhead market, um, how do you communicate that appropriately in the like the market opportunity? So, like for example, for flight training aircraft. A lot of them are used recreationally too. So I can have a focus, but beyond that, there's not significant technical differences. Um, but it makes sense to naturally go there. So how would you communicate something like that to an investor in this pitch?
So investors vary so dramatically on this. So I'm going to ask a poll. So the investors in the room, Jonathan's still here, Chris is still here. Let's see, who else is still? Anyway, so I really, really like to see a very clear beachhead market. That this is like you explain your target market clearly on with their profile, who they are, how many it is, how big that market is, how much they'll pay, like whatever you can tell us about them, so that we know that you know how to reach them. And then you can explain what the next market is and that the TAM is this bigger one. But I've had founders tell me, oh, but investors tell me they need this TAM of at least this number. So Jonathan, Chris, let's see whoever else is still here. Unmute yourself. Do you like to see this huge TAM or do you like to see like this really clear beachhead market and then the progression?
So I'll ask, why not both? So first off, I could go on and on about TAM and how most people get it wrong, but
Yeah,
we
exactly.
need to see, and it really depends on how far and how much traction you have on your current beachhead market. If you already have great traction on that, you can start with that and explain, look at all the customers, and then we're going to turn this into a big market, and this is going to go to our next market, which will be even bigger, and blah, 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 blah. If you're starting as an earlier stage, what tends to work, and again, this is a matter of personal preference and all kinds of situations, is to start and say, like, hi, my name is Jonathan, and I'm building the world's largest network of home batteries for electrical backup or whatever. Big thing. Then I'm instantly skeptical and said, like, here's how we're going to do it. We're going to start by selling these switches, and then we're going to do this and this and this, and that's going to grow, and this is the way we're building it.
Okay.
It's easy to get lost in that first, the MVP, that minimum viable product, and not really show how that's going to be big. And if you frame your product as like, we're going to do this for this very specific market, you sometimes run out of time or attention span or whatever, and you never get to tell the big picture about how this is going to turn into a multi-billion-dollar company. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but make sure that you have a little bit of both. Not only a great opportunity, but also a very well-defined, stepwise way of reaching that.
Thanks, Jonathan. How about you, Chris?
Well, insofar TAM, or just the size of a company, you have to also remember for the folks just starting out on their journey that not all investors have the same end goal. So Jonathan can also chime in that like VC firms want outsized returns. So the TAM is typically more of a general barometer going, okay, let's say their numbers are a magnitude off. Okay, then does it still get a good return on our fund, which then we are beholden to LPs investing into the fund. So if someone comes to me, and I've had plenty of just one-offs, oh, I'm doing a hot sauce company. It's like, that's not what we invest in. How big? Oh, we'll probably make $1 million a year, and that will like feed me and the family, and we do great. We're looking for investors. What does the investor get out of it? Right? So you can talk about hot sauce as a gigantic TAM, but if your goal is not aligned with the VC return, then there's no investment to be made either. So,
Right.
Just
Hey,
to
Chris,
catch on that for a second, that hot sauce company will never be a VC fundable business,
right.
but under specific circumstances might be a perfectly good angel investment. And so you have to understand how to craft the deal so that that deal actually works. So $1 million a year can be a meaning of revenue. $1 million a year in revenue can be a perfectly good endpoint for a angel investment under specific circumstances. And you have to find the angels that are willing to play under those circumstances, where you will never get VC funding ever in any circumstance for that.
Unless the VC is cosplaying as a PE firm.
Yes. Well, okay. Yes.
But you
Yeah,
try to stay
well,
away
in
from those
which
anyway.
and that's a really good point, Chris, that whenever you're pitching, it's really important to know who you're talking to and make sure that you're talking to the right person. You don't pitch hot sauce to a deep tech VC. And just like I get people coming to me with something and I'm like, well, I do clean tech, and they have this, clothing line or something that just doesn't work. It's not a fit, which is why those key questions at the beginning are, what do they do? Are they a fit for me? And if the fit is no, then you're wasting time. But Chris, I have a question for you. Because you invest in a very specific kind of technology, do you look first at the large TAM or the clear beachhead?
Um, the since we are very much more science focused, we look at the actual viability
Okay.
of the underlying technology. So so if you went back to the 90s, like, hey, let's invest in fusion. Well, fusion is still not here, right? And literally many of the investors who invested are probably dead, right? It's been it's been far too long, and none of them have returned anything of substance. Um, but so there are these science fair-esque startups who are going, hey, we're targeting this thing 80 years from now. That's that's great, but how are you going to get there? Is there a tangible return? Then we can start talking about how are you going to be that beachhead, and what is that outsized return for the TAM. So once there is viability, the beachhead is probably what I lean towards most of the time, because it's fairly competitive to get in, or the barrier to entry is relatively high, but also to actually secure the contract. So you're not selling to direct customers, right? You've got to have the relationships to sell to the government, regulators, vendors, etc., to then make it meaningful, which is very
Okay.
different than I think a lot of the startups here pitching today.
Right. Okay. So this is such a perfect example of make sure you're talking to the targeting your pitch to the investor that you're talking to, because people are looking for anything, for so many things. Jonathan, did you have something to add to this topic, or should we move
Just
on
a
to
couple a
Timu's?
couple quick things. First, just to be super clear, there are a lot of great businesses that angels and VCs will never invest in just because they're not venture scale. And it's a whole other topic, and John's given lots of talks. Don't feel that if you're turned down that you don't have a good business idea, but in general, to get the kinds of returns that angels and VCs are looking for, you need to have something that's pretty big in the first place. That isn't to say that it's not a great idea and couldn't be very good, but just see that. And the second thing, it is really important to know your audience, and if they're not super familiar with the size of the market you're going after, that needs to go up in precedence. Just last week was talking to a company that does software for designing optical engineers to use to design like lenses and all that. Okay, how big of a market is? Well, until they told me that someone else in the field had just gotten bought up for like 3 or 400 million dollars, I thought it was a pretty small market. That got my attention. So even more than a TAM number, which is some general idea, comparable companies using a similar business model, whatever, is incredibly potent way of showing how big this market could be, especially if it's something like, again, optical engineering. What most people probably don't know a lot about.
Thanks. That's a good example, Jonathan. Timu, did you have a question?
Hey Dana, yeah, I was going back to actually now that I've had this conversation, or you guys have had that conversation going on for a while. Had two parts, I guess. First was on the customer interviews and such. How much of an effect does that have? Because I've done literally dozens of them at this point, like half hour long, etc. How do I capture that best in a deck to make it relevant? Like what part do I put that in to say I've had these conversations, so I not only have the macro data, but I have this in-depth conversations with people that fit the ICP really well. So where would I put that in the deck and how would I present that? That's kind of the first question I had.
I mean, it does depend on your story, and it can be slotted into different places. It could be in your problem when you're talking about these customers have
Yeah.
expressed this is exactly what they say about this problem. It could be in market opportunity when you're talking about this is our beachhead market. We've interviewed dozens of them that are in this segment, and this is what they're looking for,
Yeah.
and this is what they're like they are ready to buy. It could be in various places. It depends on where you can fit it in. And I think John loves this topic. He will have something to add to.
Yeah, I don't love this topic. It's my obsession, apparently, because I have knee-jerk reactions to this. So the first thing that you said that sort of triggered my thing is they are ICPs. And so what what we normally see, like at startup weekends, where we're trying to practice this kind of activity of engaging with people, is that people are not doing enough experimentation with enough volume. So you said dozens, and then I go, oh, immediately I'm thinking there's not enough volume there. More importantly, you said customers. I only know one way to evaluate if someone's a customer. They have paid me. And so when you say I went and talked to 100 random people, which are uncharacterized, and they told me stories, and then I sorted them into piles and called them ICPs, that's just sorting random grains of sand on the beach. That doesn't tell me anything about the market for real. And what I need to find is 100 people who are actual customers, who are actually early adopters, who are really in pain right now, who will move right now to solve the same problem. If I can find that, I've completed step one of the 4 steps of the epiphany. I have found customer problem fit. I have a bunch of early adopters that are spending right now to try to figure out how to solve this problem. And they will buy my white paper. They will buy my ebook. They will buy my workshop on how all of the other company or other solutions don't work, or the various things. There's at least 15 different things you can sell today to the prospective customer as a way of validating that they are a customer, that they will spend money to solve the problem, so that you then get the right to interview them to say, well, what have you tried? And now that you ask what they have tried and collected the data from 1,000 people, now you have a very sophisticated competitive matrix of these are all the things people are doing, and none of these things solve this particular problem. And there's a pile of people, see, I got 100 of them, that want to solve this particular thing. So then how can we best solve that particular thing? And then what's the size of that market to solve that particular thing? Because maybe 80% of the market is very happy with the current tools, and you're finding a submarket that's unhappy with that set of tools, right? And so if you can't give me a sophisticated competitive matrix with some evidence of customers that are unhappy, customers who have paid you who are unhappy, who are then working with you perhaps on a consulting basis, perhaps on a workshop basis, perhaps on a concierge, Dana's going to do a boot camp, run boot camps about how to solve the problem with the existing tools, and find the people that remain unsatisfied and find out why they're unsatisfied. And now if you have that, now you can start saying I have an ICP because I've actually measured and characterized it with data, as opposed to the other, because as I do that, I can move the price around what I charge for my boot camp, right?
Yeah. So if you don't mind, just to follow up on that. So yes, I fully follow what you're saying, and I agree with you 100%. I should say that every one of these people that I did interview were they already fit the profile, so they were self-selected. I went and said, if you fit this profile, then I would validate that did they fit this profile, and it was they self-selected to become part of it, and they engaged. They were willing to participate. I said it's
Did
going
they
to take a half
pay
an hour.
you? Did they
They're
pay
all
you?
willing to pay me. That's the interesting part.
Okay.
Well,
No,
so
I
in
mean I
my
understand that. No,
my my world,
no,
the
I
difference
understand that. But that's
the
not.
difference
But here,
between cheerleaders and customers is significant. And
I
my equation for my experience is 90% cheerleaders and 10% customers. And I want the 10%, not the 90%.
I agree. I agree. My obviously my challenge here is this. Why I was getting at it is because I am my solution is going to be very expensive to build, so I can't have them pay something that I don't haven't built yet. So this is all
Why not?
pre-seed, pre-product. Pardon
Actually,
me?
that's that both of first of all, yes, can pay you for it. They can pay you to stand in line for it when it comes. They can be
Okay.
strategic customers who then pay for the time and materials to build it. So there are a bunch of different ways to slice it on the solution side where they do pay you for it before it's built. But on the other hand, they can pay you for information about how to optimize things where they are at now without the current solution, or even an understanding of the marketplace where you're building a map of the competitive matrix. You can monetize the competitive matrix without even talking about your solution. And the
Well,
act of paying you for the information about the market is enough of an indicator that they are willing to pay to solve the problem.
so
Okay.
one quick question though, as a follow-up, because my customers are basically consumers.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you get consumers to pay for something that I mean, that they're willing to pay for it if it were to, everybody's like, that's not, they're like, I would pay that in a minute. Like a heartbeat. You had that today, I would pay for it. But they're consumers. So it's not like I'm going after a business who's like, okay, I would invest in you because you show me promise that I will save money. I'm not trying to save people money. My trajectory is a completely different
So,
value
so out
proposition.
out in the world, there are people who will buy a custom car, Bugattis, for 250,000, and
Yeah, this is true.
they are consumers, and they are a different sub-market of consumer than the people that will buy the $20,000 Leaf. And you have the job of market sub-segmentation, and you can find the ones that will pay you to build a car from scratch at the beginning so that you can get to the point that you build the
Okay.
$35,000 Tesla in the third or fourth iteration.
Yeah, and you know
Okay.
what? There's also other ways, like for consumers, like Kickstarter, crowdfunding, waiting lists, where like prepay, things like that to prove that there's demand. But yeah, it sounds like you've talked to the right people, but somewhere in there, it's like this is our waiting list of people who had paid X to be on it, or this is the Kickstarter campaign where we
Yeah.
raised this much, and now we need to top it up for manufacturing. So finding that validation that's concrete that
Okay.
you can give a nice story to, or create this story around it in like problem or market opportunity or your business model that shows that you've got people waiting.
That's
Thank
fair.
you.
All right.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Adrian.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have a question, or does anybody want to throw out their problem solution one-liners to get feedback on from investors in the room? Yes. Sejal,
Yes. I mean, if everyone's okay, I'd like to try out my problem solution.
we'd
Uh,
love to hear it.
okay. So what we build is what we call a smoke detector for your heart. It warns physicians anytime there's a cardiac problem. So what's the problem we're solving? You all know someone that's had a heart attack, and in general, it's always sudden. So cardiac events occur quietly and many days before a crisis. So our solution is to prevent and catch these cardiac events before they become an emergency. And the way we do it is we monitor your heart rate continuously through a radar sensor that is touchless and is transparent to the user.
Thank you. All right. So, investors in the room, I happen to think that that was pretty clear. And I liked your tagline of smoke detector for the heart because it's memorable.
I was unclear who's going to pay for it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
if I'm getting it at a hospital, or I'm doing it at a clinic, or I'm doing it at a home service level, that would be some go-to-market strategy component in there would be useful. You did a good value proposition for health, but I didn't see the business in it.
But this is
Thank you.
problem and solution statements. Business market opportunity and business model comes later. But yes, we do want to know who's the problem, who's
Yeah,
paying for the
I
problem.
generally do that in the why now. So why do we need it now? That's where the nursing homes, skilled nursing homes, which are overloaded, nurses don't have the bandwidth, is where we come in. And it's a
Okay.
market.
Jonathan, did you have feedback?
Yeah, you start by saying warns physicians. So it wasn't clear if this is something that's a prescribed product, this is a health product. So on one end, it's smoke detectors that are very much in the home. They give you a warning and say, get out immediately. Or it's
Right.
like tell a physician who gets like an alert that shows up in Epic or somewhere, and they, rather than calling an EMT, it was unclear if this was an immediate thing or if this is a wellness thing. And then last thing is you talk about radar for your heart, I begin thinking hardware. The thing that made me want to know is like, hey, can this just run on an Apple Watch? And then I don't have to get in the hardware market. But that's the
Right.
what you teased me, so I was interested.
Yeah,
Good deal.
it
Thanks.
got attention.
I see Tyson.
Okay, Tyson.
Hi, I've actually just got a question for you. So I'm working with a couple of companies that are kind of they're in the life science area where it's a very long runway, a lot of development to happen before a product is going to occur. Um, some of them have multiple um, different areas that they can reach or verticals. And I'm just kind of trying to understand if it's better to focus on one main one and then say, oh, by the way, we have these other things later, or if being able to kind of hit multiple aspects at the same time is important in that early investor pitch, if that's clear at all.
No, it is. It is. So investors like to see two things, and it's hard to do them both at once, but they want to see first that you have focus because you can't sell to seven markets at the same time effectively. So if you're going to start
Right.
with this one, because the early adopters, it's a great beachhead, people move faster, we'll get some traction, whatever. That's a good thing to know. They also want to see also that you have the ability to grow beyond that beachhead. So I think it's part of a two-part story of this is where we're starting, and then these are the other verticals that we will reach out
It's
to at
on
the
the
next
go to
stage.
market
And
slide.
yeah, that's probably more for go to market or even market opportunity. Jonathan, did you have a suggestion?
I often do see pitches in each direction. When I see pitches that have seven potential markets up front, my first gut reaction is, boy, they still need to do some customer discovery. They need to qualify those. They need to find out what their beachhead market is. And I'd like them to do that on their own dime, not on mine, because I love to see that there's opportunities, and we aren't just okay with pivots to new markets. We kind of expect them. And we like the fact that your eyes are open and that the technology or the market or whatever has these adjacent opportunities that may end up being better. But ultimately, when you're pitching to us, we need to have a focused plan where the capital that we invest can be deployed in one direction with your eyes open. And if you change, that's okay. But coming in with like a whole bunch of them really shows a lack of focus and indicates that maybe it's time for you to figure out and choose one before you really are raising.
Good point, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thanks. Does anybody else have a question or want to throw out their problem solution statement? Because if you ask four different investors for feedback, you'll get four different answers.
Maybe six.
Sometimes more.
Yes. Oh, now we've made them afraid. All right, here we go. David and Tyson. Yeah, go ahead, David.
Thanks. The software that you need to operate your cannabis business is too danged expensive, and you should leverage an open source solution that reduces the total cost of ownership and brings a lot more control into your facility.
Okay, so thank you very much. I have a few comments on that. You were kind of speaking at the more solution focused, whereas like the software for doing this is too expensive, you should do this. But I'd like to really know what the customer is thinking as opposed to what you think they should be thinking. So as opposed to like the general statement, be specific, like these cannabis growers are frustrated that there's no software that's really effective for what they need, and what is out there is too expensive. Our solution is more tailored, it's cheaper, blah, blah, blah. That would it shows me that you understand what they say as opposed to what you think they should do. Does that make sense?
How is it not clear that I know what they are saying?
Because it's just a matter of rephrasing it. Instead of saying they say that tell us where it sounds more like it's from their perspective that cannabis growers are
So like,
struggling with this. Like tell us their struggles as opposed to like just if you frame it that way, it makes it look like you're hearing them.
like the last 1,000 operators in the cannabis space I talked to, their primary complaint was cost, and their secondary complaint is control.
Yeah, that's much more that shows that you've really understand them.
I was worried about taking too long. But okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, Jonathan, did you have feedback on that?
Just super briefly, first off, it seemed like a really great customer pitch. It didn't seem like it was a statement, didn't really seem aimed at investors who maybe don't understand this. Secondly, it's always hard to convince someone that this is a great business opportunity primarily based on pricing, especially if there's something that's special about you that prevents existing incumbents just from lowering their prices. So that's really it's one of the harder pitches to make to investors is that we're going to undercut our competitors, even though we don't have a lower cost structure.
Understood. How could I then highlight that? I mean, we know cost is their primary concern, but that the control is secondary and important. Maybe I would just move that.
Well, there may be a whole bunch of things like cannabis sales are going beyond just the raw product. There are upsells, and we're going to make a lot of money by providing the base functionality, and there will be upsells to other functionality that they're going to need for regulatory compliance or whatever. So some way that shows that it's not that we're going to be making less money than the incumbents, but that we're going to provide a business model that is more appropriate to get in the front door earlier, and then we make our money on the backside. Something like that, because ultimately, again, we look for investing in businesses and we want ones that delight their customers, but also make enough money to be able to continue and grow.
Tyson, would you like to share your problem solution statement? Or did you have a question?
Yes. So technical life science founders are commonly missing the operations vision and experience to translate the products into scalable companies and businesses. As a fractional COO with life science PhD and business development experience, I provide a low overhead, low cost, high efficiency opportunity to provide that experience and help them overcome these challenges.
Okay, so that sounds like it's more of a sales pitch than an investor pitch. That's okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's
Well,
absolutely, yeah.
that's all right. It was pretty clear from the beginning that you're talking to life science, technical founders who struggle with things that are not their expertise. And
Yep.
I'm sure when you meet them, you understand their problem and they go, yes, I need help.
Right, but would need to be, yes,
I would make it
understood.
a little bit shorter, like if you're actually sending them a like a proposal and these phrases are you're using a something about the problem to really make that a little like something in their words and a little bit shorter
Okay,
so that
excellent.
they could identify themselves in it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions or comments? Austin.
Yeah, I'd like to try the problem statement and solution.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so for every 5 students who begin flight training, only one will become a certified pilot, And the majority of those reasons are financial barriers and skills acquisition. So what we're doing is building hybrid and pure electric airplanes, specifically for flight training, that decrease operating costs with fuel savings and just electric versus internal combustion maintenance, and then also designing it from the start with software and hardware tie-in, so we can improve training situations pre and post flight.
Okay. So I like that that you gave this that industry number of, that so few actually finish. And then these are the two reasons. So I really liked your problem statement. Um, and the solution is airplanes that are then cheaper. Yeah, I like that. It makes sense to me. I mean, there's a lot then it made me curious to learn, well, how big is this market? Who would buy this? Is this for training schools? Is this for so it made me curious and it was easy to understand. So for the most part, that's a good start. Um, Christopher likes space and aerospace. Chris, do you have any feedback on that problem statement?
Um, I think the problem solution statement is great. It's focused. It doesn't sound off the cuff to be venture scalable. I don't, but I don't know that side of that market. So I'm very focused on space and less on aerospace, but I do know about the battery electric airplane industry a bit because of electric propulsion. However, again, it's like you're selling into, it seems, training schools and things. So, but
Yeah, it did
overall,
make
it's
me wonder,
concise,
yeah,
and I
how big the market
understand
is.
that there are potential customers there.
Okay. Thank you, Chris.
It's also why I asked about the market opportunity, because it is a smaller segment of general aviation, but uh, yeah,
And then
I guess
are
that's
you
enough.
raising money and then you would grow from that or
Yes, yeah, it'd
okay.
be the same hardware platform essentially.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so it's a clear initial problem. I think if you're giving a verbal pitch, that's a good way to get people to understand what you do. For a pitch deck that they're not meeting you, you'd probably need to start
Hmm.
off with something that shows that it's going for something bigger, or somebody a VC might not get past the solution statement.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. Yes, Timo, did you have another question?
Well, I took up so much time, so I wanted to let everybody else just squeeze in there. So apologies for being such a time hog there. But I thought maybe I'd do the problem statement.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. So premium travelers, frequent flyers mostly, face a really challenging trade-offs. Avoid public sharing, like Facebook and Instagram, due to security risks and ad tracking, data profiling. Yet private tools like text, WhatsApp require manual updates, like texting family about flight delays, sending colleagues arrival times, updating friends with photos across fragmented threads. While they allow engagement through comments and reactions, all these conversations and memories disappear into scattered histories with no permanent organized record. So what we're providing people is a secure platform to enable that kind of connection to both family and extended circles of people with varying degrees of data they get to interact with.
Okay, so that was a lot in the problem statement that was like I'm not super clear that people don't have a tool now to keep in touch with their family. So I'm just wondering if you might need to start with a unique value proposition on why you're different, which usually you need to start with a hook anyway, but
It's around privacy. I'm trying to
around
build. It's around
privacy.
privacy. Yeah, it's privacy is the differentiator. There's no ad tracking. There's no data sales. There's literally, you do this all in private, so there's no third party. So it's a secure site. It's a secure circle that you're interacting with. So
Okay.
We're the DuckDuckGo of WhatsApp.
it's beyond that. It's a DuckDuckGo is a good analogy to a certain extent, but it has the same attributes as DuckDuckGo. However, what it does is integrates a lot of third-party information such as flight tracking or your cruise tracking, location tracking, and we act as a sort of a middleman in between. So we collect the data for them, share the data with who they want it to be shared with. However, the parties that are providing that data, such as FlightAware or someone like that, doesn't know who they're giving that data to. We're just act as a middleman. And all that's integrated into a single package. So you basically have a platform where everything is collected, everything's surrounded around a trip. And when the trip is done, you create another trip at the next time around. So it's
so you're operating at a deeper technical level, trying to be accurate and correct about all of the details of the thing.
okay.
When you need to send like a 5 to 7 word summary that moves us into the right box so that we're looking at
Okay.
it from the right angle. So really
Fair.
what you want to give us is, of the 360 degrees that we could be looking at you, which angle are we looking at you? And all of the details of all of the ways that you're great happens in like meeting 3 or 4, not in the first meeting. And when you dive into the details, you give us lots of feed for our rabbit holes, which we then dive down into the rabbit holes. And the logical answer to rabbit holes is that we get confused and we stop paying attention. And so you want us to continue paying attention and be looking at it from the right angle. And it's going to be a short 5 to 7 words, maybe a little bit longer, but not a lot longer answer. So DuckDuckGo of travel awareness, DuckDuckGo of family trips. I mean, there's some kind of short thing that will put us into the right box so that we don't go jumping down all the rabbit holes about that. And then you can provide us with the specific rabbit holes you want us to pay attention to.
And
So John, do you mind if I use your DuckDuckGo analogy?
No, that's fine.
I'll
Whatever.
credit it to you.
and
Yeah, there you
you might want to start that off with a story. My college-aged niece was she was traveling around Europe. It was hard to keep in touch between WhatsApp and FlightAware and her train schedules and everything else. Whereas this app is secure and private, and we always know that she's safe.
So may I ask a follow-up on that real quick, Dana? Because that's what confuses me. Because I've been to some of these meetings where I've met with VCs, and I do have these conversations. I start off with slowly, like you said, a story, and then I do the problem piece kind of intertwined. But I was thinking that we had to focus on just the problem statement. So if I preview it with a story, then I'm kind of like
No, you could do the problem statement as a story so that
okay.
you don't get into the weeds of all the different
Okay.
problems.
So use
But
use
just
an
like this is the
example.
problem.
Yeah.
Niece is traveling in Europe, and between her flight and train schedules and the youth hostel that we couldn't find on maps, we
Okay. Yeah.
struggled
No.
to keep in touch.
Yeah. I was a little conflicted about
Yeah.
problem statement has to be 7 words or whatever, and then give a
No,
story.
like the
Okay.
hook should be less than 10 words, like the DuckDuckGo for
Okay.
travelers. But if the problem is getting too in the weeds, try a customer story or an example where that someone can relate to.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just one option.
No, that's perfect. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Pitch perfect.
Carlos, I think your hand is up next.
Well, thank you. I thought I tried the problem
Yay.
solution right. I wrote this as you were talking, so I haven't had a huge time to re-edit it, but we'll see. In 5,000 hospitals, nurses use well-meaning but effective medication procedures. Nurse Rodonda DeVoit had a typical challenging day. The medication she used on that day allowed her to dispense the wrong medication, which she gave to Charlene, who was a patient there, who subsequently died from it in 20 minutes. The rendezvous made mistakes, but the hospital also created the opportunity for it to happen. Redonda was devastated. She left nursing and was subsequently charged with homicide. Paris builds medication tracking and dispensing equipment that is patient-centered and is used in each room of patient care. And we prevent this problem and many others, which cost $12 billion a year in medication errors that can be prevented.
That is a very powerful story, Carlos. It was a little bit long, depending on the situation. And I think that if in the right setting, if you're talking to medical, and if you're talking to angel investors who invest in med tech, that's a very powerful story. And particularly if you have like a 10-minute pitch or longer, then that's a great way to begin. If you're talking to VCs and maybe you don't have as much time, you probably need to start with that data point of this is how big the problem is of you said millions of mistakes or people die, things like that. Then for them, that would probably like go right to how urgent and big this problem is. So it depends on who you're talking to, but I like the story. It had me listening.
Yeah, I think if you don't have the Redonda story in there, or one of many other stories of the real person, it doesn't have the same bite.
Yeah,
if it's just $12 billion and we have a solution to it, we're missing the glue that.
I think this is one of the places where ChatGPT is going to help you, where you ask it to, shrink it and shorten it from a bunch of different perspectives, and it will highlight where the juicy parts are after you read the alternatives it presents and get something that's much tighter,
I just wanted to chime in. I think the story is good. It's compelling. It sounds like something I'd hear at Keiretsu, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But the kind of like if you are in a noisy hallway conversation, if you are at a conference, what is that distillation in as few words, as few seconds as possible, right? What I'm hearing is um, you have a solution to prevent malpractice suits, if I'm getting that right.
Carlos, you're on mute.
I think Carlos took his headset off. Carlos, can you hear us?
Carlos. No, I don't think he's hearing us.
I think he lost it. Oh, no, he has his headset on. Carlos, can you hear us? Maybe something went wrong.
Did he drop?
I think that's a really good, Christopher, that was bang on. I was thinking of a Keiretsu event where it's a room of angels that a story like this would get their attention. But yeah, Carlos, can you hear us? I don't think he can hear anymore.
He's currently muted. There we go.
Carlos, did you hear us?
It sounds like probably get cut off.
A connection.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. He can watch the recording. That was great feedback, Chris. John.
Hi, Dana. I'd like to take a shot at the problem statement as well. Also, this has been awesome. I think I've restructured my entire pitch deck just during the call.
Hooray!
All right, so here's my problem statement. Certified hand therapists, like my co-founder, are in high demand and work at near 100% capacity. Much of their time is spent manually fabricating hand splints from materials that are not very durable instead of focusing on the patient. And so the solution is we have an easy-to-use web-based platform that generates custom hand splint geometry and automates the 3D printing process, which allows hand specialists to focus more time on patients rather than manual splint fabrication.
Okay. So I get it. But I think it could be a lot more clear. Particularly as like, I don't have any friends who are hand therapists, so I don't know this. I don't know this market. I see a physical therapist, but it's, not for my hands. So maybe we need something that really shows how urgent this is. So
John is
perhaps,
demonstrating right now.
yeah, right. So John knows this industry.
The wrong way.
Um, I think that we could get it much more like as opposed to hand therapists, they're overbooked and you're not fixing the problem of them being overbooked because they still probably will be. You're fixing the problem that people are leaving with this manual wrap that's not that effective. So if you could tell us, the hand therapist's frustration that they spend ages concocting a manual wrap, but they know it's not the best solution for their customers, and now they're able to whip up something that's much more effective, tailor-made, and longer lasting, or something like
Yeah,
that.
I think it's twofold. I think if my co-founder was here, she would say that they do an excellent job of creating good fit, but it takes a lot of time, and a lot of times the materials and the solutions aren't that durable. So, in a
Okay.
couple of weeks, a week or 2 weeks, somebody comes back and they have to be refit or have another splint made.
Okay. So it's more like
It,
time, not durable.
Yeah.
I think it's important to think about, often you can do it better, but it only gives you like a 10% better experience or whatever. And that it's very hard to change the behavior of people for just 10%. And that you have to find the sub-segment of the market where it's like a factor of 10 better. Like I lost functionality in my hand because I had the wrong kind of splint. Like 2 weeks in the wrong kind of splint gave me tendonitis, which is like a pain in the hand, right?
Oh, wow.
So,
Yeah.
so there's lots of reasons why doing it wrong can be more than a 10% problem. It's a factor of 10 problem. And,
Right.
and, the consequences of nerve damage, the consequences of tendonitis, there's a whole bunch of consequences where not all of the people will have that, but a specific subgroup will have that, which is why doing the submarket analysis is not just people that need a splint. It's people that are having certain kinds of failure modes with the splint that would then spark that conversation into a much more tighter resolution.
Okay, yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point. I'll put that down. One hope on the capacity issue is that we are hoping to parallelize something that couldn't be parallelized before. So the specialist can actually enter the measurements necessary to start the printer while talking with the patient. The printer is automated and starts printing on its own, and then the therapist can go on to the next patient while the first patient waits for the printer to finish.
Okay.
So
So
we are hoping there's a savings there.
yeah, so it'll be time savings and it'll be more durable.
You have to
We
characterize
were,
that. You can't hope. You have to get numbers.
yeah, you have
Yeah.
to show that people want that and that they would build it into their workflow. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I want to thank all of you founders that stuck it out to the end, and especially for the other investors like Chris and Jonathan who piped in and gave us their perspective and listened to our conversation. So I appreciate you all. I know somebody else had one more. Did somebody else have their hand up? Or that was Jonathan. Anyway, if you have to go now, I just want to thank you very much for being here. And then we'll let Jonathan add his comment while John Garrison is still here to listen. So thank you so much, everyone.
Just super briefly, I thought it was a great summary. Some things like saying it was web-based didn't seem really core to the value proposition you were giving. I'd much rather have heard that it was going to be 3D printed on site. But also, yeah, my next thing after I heard that would be here's how it makes a business sense, either by opening up the market so that these splints can be done by, in a dock in a box at a CVS, or it allows, there's this huge backlog, or it's going to provide better results. That's going to be more than a 10 or 20%, as John was saying, improvement. Seeing how either it can get higher, because a lot of this is just, the billing codes that are now the bane of everyone. Either it can get additional billing codes, or you can get higher uh, reimbursements. Those sort of things can make sense
Yeah.
because right now, to say like, hey, you're going to have this additional expense of a printer and all this stuff. This may or may not make economic sense, and I really want to see validation on that.
Yeah, those are
When it's
excellent points.
discovered.
Yeah. We're making L3933s, and they can be billed under conventional billing.
Okay, great. Again, that's like the next thing I want to know is like, here's
Yeah.
how it can get built, because some of the best innovations, the greatest ideas just don't fly because of the way things get paid for at least in the US.
Yeah.
So
Excellent. Thank you.
John, the other John has put the link into the chat of how to apply for Venturous. And so you should go figure that out. And I hope that Jonathan put his LinkedIn in. I don't remember that he did, but everybody, if you want to save the chat, the three dots at the top or bottom will let you save the chat. You should do that now. And we will take uh, this recording and put it on our YouTube channel. And I put the YouTube channel link into the chat. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you so much, Dana, for helping us. We have a number of other workshops in the works. I'm just trying to get all the speakers to send me all the data so I can post them. But pay attention to the meetup groups and you should see them come in. And thank you so much for joining us today. And we will do more shortly. Bye, everyone.